Okay, this is chapter 18 of my autobiography. More about Sharon, the kids, and ex girlfriends. As I look back on everything in my life from childhood to adult, I had always wondered, why do all these bad things keep occurring? Why did I make all these bad choices? Why didn't I just listen to my first instincts? What in the fucking hell is wrong with me? Why did I allow myself to trust so many people just to get hurt, taken advantage of, used, bullied, being intimidated by, and burnt? And I still haven't begun to talk about everything yet, because bigger and worse things that happened after the divorce, as I'm getting ready to explain. Sharon and I had managed to move into an apartment building on a side street off New York near what used to be the women's prison. It was a nice apartment that was a two-bedroom, and both upper and lower bunk beds were brand new, still in the plastic, and hadn't been opened. The stove and refrigerator were brand new. The only thing that was old was the master bedroom stuff and the living room furniture. I forgot to mention that a year before this, shortly after Starla was born, Sharon had to go in for surgery for dysplasia, where they had to remove abnormal cells that could have caused cancer if not treated. The doctors did what was called a cone biopsy to remove abnormal cells. After the surgery, the doctors had told Sharon that she didn't have much of a cervix left, and that if she got pregnant again, that she would be at high risk and would have to be bed rest for the whole 9 months of her pregnancy, other than to go to the bathroom. Well, unfortunately, it ended up happening, and she did get pregnant again. But the pregnancy had only lasted about 5 months, and I tried to tell Miss Dumbass that I knew she wasn't going to be able to carry it, since she had just had that surgery almost a year before, and the doctors tried to tell her also, but she insisted that no one knew what they were talking about. She was pregnant when she lived in that apartment. But one day I developed a fever and strep throat. Sharon was having lower abdominal pains. Everything happened all at once. I was driving a blue Chevy Citation at the time. Another thing I forgot to add was I already dealt with strep throat when I was 19 and almost died. I was dating a woman named Nancy Delaney, who had worked for AmVet's Value Village at the time. I think I was either buying clothes or some type of electronics at the time, and Nancy was hanging clothes up in one of the aisles. I approached her and asked her the location of a certain item, and she assisted me and had joked around with me. As we talked, we got to asking each other questions and had exchanged information. We ended up getting together. My biggest mistake with any woman I've been with is two things. One, I'm too nice, or always try to play Mr. Treat Me Right or Mr. Nice Guy. And two, I always fall in love. Damn it, why in the fuck do I do that? Because they damn sure didn't respect me. I would have been better off treating them like shit, because I didn't know right away that Nancy was married but separated. We were together about a couple of months, and she had me convinced that her and this mystery husband were getting a divorce. Until one day she calls, I go over there, we make love of all things. Then this I'll be nice woman was, she has her fucking nerve to tell me that she's going back to her husband after we had just had sexual intercourse. My heart fell to my feet like, what the fuck? I could not believe what I was just hearing. The weather was strange that week, hot and sunny one day, icy rain and cold the next. In this case, it was icy rain on this day. I had no jacket and had walked home with a long sleeve button down silk red shirt. The cold rain had hit my chest. When I finally reached home at my grandparents' house, I was shivering cold. I was soaked. I got my wet clothes off, got in a hot tub, and sat there for a while. Then I got out of the hot tub, dried off, then put some dry clothes on. Then the worst happened. I got real bad sick. I got pneumonia and strep throat, and for 2 weeks I had fought for my life. I had 2 blisters on my upper lip and 2 blisters on my lower lip. The inside of my mouth was swollen so bad that I could take my tongue and touch the roots of my teeth. I threw up several times till all I was throwing up was water. At the time I weighed 210 and went down to 173 in 2 weeks. I laid on the couch and only drank 7-Up for 2 weeks. I was praying to die. I was in that bad a shape. I was too sick to grieve over my breakup with Nancy, and that bitch didn't even have a clue that I was fighting for my life at the time. My grandparents took me to a private doctor in Fountain Square. His name was Dr. Fitzgerald. He gave me double shots in my right arm of penicillin every other day for 2 weeks. According to law, he wasn't supposed to do that, but he saved my life. After 2 weeks, I started regaining my appetite and had my grandparents stop by a White Castle to buy me 12 White Castles. I ate 11. When I finally recovered and could eat normally again, I was hurt and angry all at the same time. It finally hit me over the breakup, but I was so angry about being made to walk home in the cold rain and get sick. What a wonderful way to end a relationship. A couple people who knew Nancy at the AMVETS had told me that she had quit working there and said that she had found out that she was pregnant. When I went over to her house where she lived, she had already moved out. I did run into her by accident years later. Her name was on a gold-plated plaque on the wall at a Taco Bell. I thought, could this be the same Nancy Delaney? So a week later I came in. Sure enough, it was her. I asked her about the baby, and she said yes, she had a boy, but quickly told me that I had nothing to worry about. I wanted to talk to her some more about it, but when I came in the next week, she had already quit her job. Her excuse to the manager was she was quitting for personal reasons, but didn't explain why. I wanted so bad to confront her, this husband of hers, and the possibility that her son could have been for me and would have demanded DNA tests. I truly believe she quit her job to avoid me because I was on to her and I wanted some answers. I was already still angry over what happened when I was 19, and this bitch keeps avoiding me. Why? All I wanted was some simple answers, then I'd walk away. Why the games? Why the bullshit? Everything about Nancy Delaney was hush-hush and kept either quiet or secret. I do believe that the reason Nancy did this was because she didn't want her husband to ever find out about me. But here's an update. It is now January 2018. If the baby boy that Nancy was pregnant with was mine, he would be around close to 34 years old today. If I ever run into Nancy Delaney ever again, I'm going to ask her if she ever told her husband about me. Because if she didn't, I'm going to tell her to her face that if I ever catch her and her husband together, I'm going to confront him right in front of her. Because I think after she did me dirty the way she did, the truth needs to come out after all these years, and I feel within my heart that her husband needs to know about me. Not only that, but if there's the least little bit of chance that the child she was pregnant with happened to be mine, I think the boy deserves to know the truth. I also think that it is time that Nancy Delaney quit playing hide and seek. The main reason for me jumping backwards to age 19 was the fact that I was explaining my first time with strep throat, but not my first time with pneumonia. My mother had told me that I had pneumonia when at 4 months old and had almost died, which probably explains the reason why it was so easy for me to get it again. So now I'll jump back forward to 1990 and explain that I had a reoccurrence of the strep throat and Sharon was having lower abdominal pains. all this shit was happening at the same time. So I took Sharon to the hospital. The kids went to her mother's, unfortunately. We wait for what seemed like forever. They admitted Sharon. I was out there until 5 a.m. the next morning. I wasn't feeling good at all. I was exhausted. The doctors had informed me that Sharon would be alright. So I left the hospital, went and picked up the kids, and went home. I told the kids that they could play games as long as they kept the noise down. I asked them if they had had breakfast yet, and they said no. So I fixed them breakfast, then went to sleep afterward. I think I was asleep for about 3 hours when I heard a knock at the front door. It was Beth, Willie's girlfriend at the time. She came to tell me that the hospital had called and wanted me to come out to sign papers and that Sharon would be losing the baby. I cried, but I knew all along it would happen. I tried to tell Sharon, and she wouldn't listen to me. I had just woken up after Beth came in with the news and realized that I was getting worse and sicker. Then I went in the bathroom and looked in the mirror, opened my mouth, and realized that I was relapsing and had strep throat again. I could barely hold my head up, I felt so bad. But I drove the kids over to my grandparents' house. They went out to eat at MCL cafeteria, so I had to wait on them to return home. When they got home, I explained what was wrong and told them I had to go to the hospital. One for me and the other one was to sign papers for Sharon. I went out there to that hospital and tried to explain to this uneducated intern that I needed to sign papers for a doctor's release for medical attention on Sharon. Then I explained that I needed to be admitted to have my tonsils removed. I also explained that I had the strep throat before and had been seen by a private doctor and had been warned about the possibility of relapsing whenever I got sick with a cold again. I was struggling to talk at the time and had a hard time keeping my head up. This intern had her nerve to tell me that I didn't know what I was talking about and that I wasn't a doctor. I blew up. I told her I just went through the same ordeal when I was 19 and I had the symptoms and had fought for my life for 2 weeks, and told her to get a real doctor out to the waiting room area that I needed to see and talk to him. And she said he's busy and can't come out right now. So I told her, okay. Now you get back on that phone, you call that doctor back and tell him I either get admitted today and get these tonsils taken out and get rid of this infection, or I'll walk out of here and go to another hospital to have the surgery done. Then I'll be back with an attorney to sue you, that doctor, and this fucking piece of shit hospital for refusing to admit me to save my life. So I started to walk out when the security guard approaches me, and as mad as I was and sick, I told him to back off. I was leaving. He spoke up and said that the doctor was coming and wanted to see me. When he arrived, I explained to him my condition and explained my problems with this intern, and he told me that they were taking me back through triage and would be admitting me. I said okay, but I had one request, that only real doctors, no interns, would be doing the surgery, or I would not sign any papers and would leave and go somewhere else. He assured me that there would be, but what happened first was this. When they finally admitted me, I was in the hospital room. There was a doctor and 2 nurses who had came in. They pulled a curtain around me. The doctor had stuck this metal fitting in my mouth and had fixed it to where I couldn't close my mouth. He then took a syringe with a long needle and stuck it a few times in the back of the inside of my mouth towards the throat area. I quickly threw up several times. The stick and the poking of that needle hurt. The 2 nurses had to hold my arms down. After the doctor was finished and they had cleaned me up, the doctor said, in about 24 hours with a couple of antibiotics through an IV, and you'll be ready for release. I slammed my fist down on this hospital table and motioned for the doctor to give me a pen and paper. I quickly wrote him and told him, like fucking hell you will. and you will either get these tonsils taken out or I'll sue this place. I already went through this once when I was 19. Now I'm going through it again, and I'm not going through this anymore. I'm not leaving this hospital till you do it." He quickly scheduled the surgery. After the surgery was finished and my tonsils were removed, I woke up to find Sharon standing over me. I couldn't speak. My throat was still sore from having my tonsils removed. I had a pen and paper to where I could write a message if I wanted to. I wrote and asked Sharon how she was holding up. She said okay. Then she said that she was sorry that she lost the baby. I told her that I wasn't trying to argue, but we both knew that it would happen. I told her to have a doctor come in and talk to me when he had a chance to. She said she would. The strange thing was, they had put Sharon and I in rooms right next door to each other. When Sharon's doctor arrived, he came in to tell me that Sharon was pregnant in one of her tubes, and that the tube had bursted, causing blood to settle back into her stomach. He also said that she almost died. I wrote and told him that the doctors had told Sharon a year before of the risks, and to explain those risks to her again, because Sharon simply doesn't get it. He said he would. Sharon got out of the hospital a few days before I did. I vowed that after this, I'd be extra careful in not getting Sharon pregnant again. As a matter of fact, at times I would make up excuses not to have sex with Sharon to assure this. I was at the point between her and I that I couldn't handle the stress and pressure of being with her, and I was tired of Sharon's actions of our marriage being an open book every time she'd get on the phone to her family. Also, Sharon occupied herself more with the voices inside her head and the strong influence her mother had on her and her actions. I couldn't reach her, and I was never on her mind except for when she felt she needed something from me. She never loved me, nor was I of any moral value to her. I got over the hurt of it quickly and started making plans, but before I finish this part of it, let's get back to me at the hospital. While I was recovering, I was watching the funeral on TV of Ryan White. I cried because it had really touched my heart. I tried to get the hospital to let me sign out of the hospital long enough so that I could drive up to the funeral and pay my respects, and they wouldn't let me. So I said a prayer for Ryan White and his family. A day or two had went by when I was released from the hospital. It took about 6 months to regain my full talking and singing voice. I had to listen to tapes and practice being me again. Since having the tonsils removed, I've had colds, maybe a little bit of a sore throat, but never the strep throat or any of its symptoms. Dr. Fitzgerald knew what he was talking about when he had mentioned that I would eventually have to have my tonsils removed. He was right, and I haven't had any problems since. Yes, Dr. Fitzgerald has passed away since then, but my heart goes out to him and his family with a great deal of thanks and the fact that he will always be remembered. Dr. Fitzgerald had saved my life, and he knew without question what he was talking about. But getting back to Sharon, there were counselors, psychiatrists, and even a judge who tried to explain Sharon's so-called chemical imbalance to me and failed and closed their ears to the fact of what was really going on behind the scenes, and straight up refused to accept the fact that Sharon was a total nutcase, and still is, and everything I tried to tell them fell on deaf ears when all I was trying to do was tell them the honest truth. But anyway, lots of bad things had happened between 1990 through 1992, as I'm getting ready to explain. Sharon has her dysplasia operation. She loses the baby. I have my tonsils removed. I lose my job. We lose our apartment. Then we move back to my grandparents' house, and not long after that, Sharon somehow catches a mononucleosis infection and ends up on life support at ICU at Wishart Hospital for several weeks and almost died. I got blamed for that from Sharon's mother, even though that wasn't my fault. Then my grandfather comes home from the doctor to announce that he found out that he had lymphoma. Then he passes away in August of 1991. All of these things have to happen during 1990 and 1991. Then I finally made the decision to leave Sharon after 7.5 years of marriage. We divorced in March 1992, but my dealings with Sharon are far from over, unfortunately, and the psycho bitch was out to make sure of it. During this time period were many things to come that were unexpected, things that I wasn't prepared for, things that I couldn't possibly have dreamed that would ever happen or take place, but they did. Well, I'll take a deep breath. I guess that one of my reasons for wanting to get with another woman or to date another woman after Sharon was because I needed relief. And I was so worn down and burnt out from all the bullshit that had happened. Oh, one more thing I forgot. Sharon did cheat on me towards the end of our relationship. Sharon was and still is a bad chain smoker, just like her mother was before she died. She would roam the neighborhood every day for a cigarette or bum off of someone. When Sharon was recovering from her sickness with the mononucleosis infection, the doctors had said that Sharon could not smoke and that her lungs would have to fully heal back to normal for a whole year. Sharon's mother had visited the hospital the same day I did and had heard the doctor say this. But was I going to stop Sharon's mother from being evil and doing things behind my back? No. I had some things that I had to take care of back home. But Sharon's mom and I had left the hospital at the same time. But Sharon's mom snuck back up to the hospital later that afternoon and had snuck a carton of cigarettes into Sharon's room. This was 3 days after being taken off the breathing machine and taken out of ICU. I blew up on her mom and cussed her out for it. I was angry. Not only that, but Sharon had fully regained her speech back. Sharon hadn't fully regained her speech back and could barely talk, and then this mother of hers, I'll be nice, wants to bring her something that could cause a setback. What was she thinking? She's a straight up fucking moron. Sharon was in ICU for almost 3 months, had almost died, and this moronic fucking idiot wants to bring her a carton of cigarettes? Oh yeah, I was highly upset. Then Sharon gets released from the hospital. It wasn't a month and Sharon is bumming cigarettes from the neighbors and begging my grandparents to buy her a pack. Then Sharon decides to cheat on me and starts messing around with Bruce Carter's older brother Calvin. I didn't catch on right away during the first 2 times she left the house to go roam the neighborhood bumming for cigarettes. Then one day I had to get a hold of her concerning something important, so I went looking for her. I walked by Bruce Carter's house and saw through the plate glass window that Sharon and Calvin were kissing. She looked up and saw me, but I just turned and walked away and went back home, upset but not surprised. After seeing that, I started making plans to leave. I got to a point where I was just so worn down of all the things I'd went through, I just couldn't take it anymore. Then I met April Montgomery through my friend Kathy Wethington that I had went to adult education, a GED class, with at St. Patrick's Church there in Fountain Square. That was a big mistake waiting to happen, but then little did I realize. Everything seemed good at first, but there I go messing up again. April was moving from one house to another, not far away, and had needed help moving the big or heavy furniture. So Kathy calls me to ask how much I'd charge to help someone move. I told her I'd offer to do it and wouldn't charge her. We met up and we introduced ourselves and had told her that I was separated and going through a divorce. I lied. In reality, I hadn't moved out yet. I later cleared that up with April, by the way. Anyway, I helped her move and we got together, but little did I realize that when I wasn't there or when I was in court, that April was having an affair with the guy next door. But anyway, before I found out all this was happening, I explained my situation involving Sharon, and it wasn't long before she had talked me into moving in with her and leaving Sharon. April and I weren't together but maybe a couple of months. Sharon had started back working in a nursing home. Why she did this, I will never know because she wasn't really mentally stable enough to do it, but she did. While Sharon was gone to work one day, I quickly packed, took the kids, and moved out. For a while, Willie and Jason were the only ones who knew where the kids and I were. I didn't even tell my grandparents at the time. I think Sharon only lasted a week staying at my grandparents' house, then she moved out and went to live with her mother, then filed for divorce. I knew with me having the kids with me that it was only a matter of time before Sharon got a court order for me to turn the kids over to her, then make me pay child support, and she did. My relationship with April was short-lived. We only lasted a couple of months when one day I had to go to court over my divorce with Sharon. And when I got back home in April's house, my stuff was missing. My stereo, CDs, speakers, anything that was of value to me was gone. April swore up and down that she knew nothing about what had happened, then has her nerve to tell me I had to move out and that she was breaking up with me. I told her that I'd be back that evening to get my clothes and to gather up what wasn't missing. I took off and walked to the nearest village pantry when I spotted a female police officer. I told her what happened and about my stuff being stolen. I gave that cop April's name and all that, and I told that cop that April had by Friday to return my stuff to me or she'd be dead by Saturday. That cop said, "Now you need to calm down." I said, "I'm as calm as I'm going to be." I also said somebody better tell her to return my stuff or you better be watching for me on Friday. April did finally come over to my grandparents' house, but I didn't get all my stuff back. Instead, I got less than half of my CDs returned, 2 of my speakers were missing, tapes were missing. She tore up the stylus arm on my turntable. When I hooked the stereo up, the speakers were blown, and the 5-band equalizer refused to work properly. $1,500 worth of stereo equipment. Parts of it were either missing or destroyed. Yep, I was upset, but I decided to let it go. I didn't want to, though. But before this incident with April had decided to return my stereo on the day that I talked to the cop, when I returned to April's later that evening, I had Willie with me, and he had a big step van that was big enough to handle anything that needed to be moved. I didn't say anything the whole time I was moving my stuff out, but you better believe that once everything was loaded up, I cussed the bitch out and called her a thieving whore. And I will continue this on a part 2.